Hello everyone! I'm sure you're ready for some more trees, so am I, but before we get started with this tutorial, I just wanted to say for any of you who might be expecting something different, this is not a block for block tutorial, meaning I'm not going to show you how to place every different block because trees are very organic and they can take any shape or form. I'm just going to show you some basic tips on how to go about creating them and how to think through the process so that you can come up with your own unique trees. Also, I don't have any block counts for this because, again, trees can take on many different shapes, so just gather a bunch of blocks and experiment. So I have a few basic palm tree shapes I'm going to show you. These are such simple trees. I don't even know why I'm doing this tutorial, but I thought it would be a good addition to my other trees. So we're going to do some simple palm trees. We have jungle wood, jungle leaves, and spruce stairs for this first one. All of them have pretty basic palettes, usually 2 or 3 blocks, and they're very easy to build. You just kind of have to know what to look for really with these types of trees. So we're going to start by doing a trunk. You can make it as tall or as short as you like. I might do a couple more blocks taller, and we'll make this one a good medium-sized height. Now I want to make the top of it stick out a little more and look more spiny, and the best way I know how to do that is with the spruce stairs. So I'm going to go 3 blocks from the top and do 1 upside down stair all the way around, and I'm just going to do this pattern on top of that. I'm going to do 2 more stairs facing the other direction. So this bottom one is upside down and these 2 are not. And I'm going to do that around. Now I could, if you wanted to, I don't know if it really matters which orientation these stairs are, but I personally like the way it looks thicker here and then thinner there. If this is how it would look if you just stacked them the same way. So it's really up to you how you want it to look, but I personally like the way this looks with the larger bump and then the smaller bump. So that's what we're gonna do on this one. Now the tops of the trees are all basically the exact same thing, but I'm going to do my best to explain to you what to look out for. So I think the biggest mistake that people make with palm trees is that they don't account for the leaves coming from all directions. It's essentially going to look like a ball sitting on top of your tree. I'm just going to start with a few little arches, and this will help me get an idea of the radius that I want my palm tree to spread. So I think that's a pretty good radius right there. You don't want it to be sticking out too far. You also don't want these to be too straight. You can have a few straighter leaves, but it's a good idea at the beginning just to kind of figure out the shape that you want. So there really is no right or wrong way to do this, but what I think I'm going to do is, since I have this one side figured out, I'm going to figure out this other side, and I'll just make sure it's looking to be about the same width across. And then I can use that as a guideline for future branches. So let's see how this looks. If I did that, those are basically the same distance apart. So I think that's pretty good. And when I was doing some test builds with this, it was basically just a lot of going back and experimenting and looking at what I had, which I know isn't the easiest thing to do in survival, doing this all in creative, but that's really what you have to do for any build, is just take a step back and look at it, then reevaluate what needs to change, and then go back and fix it. So for now, I'm just doing the 4 corners. Do not leave your palm tree like this. I mean, if you could, but it just looks kind of tacky, so don't do it. So you want to keep repeating that curved shape as you go around, but you have to start thinking about the overall shape of this. Right now, it's just looking like an umbrella. We don't want this palm tree to look like an umbrella. Sometimes they can look like that, but this one we want to look more like a ball. So I'm going to make sure that I am including some branches that go straight up or curve very slightly towards the top. That one might be a bit too tall. Again, you just have to keep reevaluating how it's turning out and what is looking right. So I'm just going to go around this whole palm tree now and fast forward a little bit, and you can see how I am placing the leaves. I'm really just thinking about the overall shape, and yes, it does help that I can fly back and look at it, but you know, if you really want to get a nice looking custom tree, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the easier it gets, because you kind of remember the patterns that you place the blocks. And at least it works for me that way. So we just want the palm tree to look very full. Make sure that all of these gaps are being filled in. If you see a large gap and nothing poking out, there's probably a leaf missing there. There really isn't a right or wrong way to do it. It's just whatever looks good, but I think what looks better, if you want to know what looks better to me, I think the fuller palm trees do look a little bit more realistic and natural. So if you want to do what I would do, that's what I would do. And don't forget, these lower branches are also just as important as the top ones. These ones are going to bend down a lot more than the top ones. Some of the top ones are almost going to go practically straight up. I do have some going almost straight up, but they do have a slight curve to them. So you also want to make sure you're not doing any that go exactly straight up. This palm tree isn't looking too bad. I think I'm going to tweak some of these earlier branches. It's always okay to go back and tweak things, but making sure it looks like a ball all the way around. This side over here isn't long enough. At least that one isn't. It wasn't sticking out as far. I think this is pretty good for our first palm tree. Just fly around one more time, make sure that the circle is staying consistent all around. If you see a weird gap somewhere, you might need an extra branch, but this one is actually looking pretty good. So I hope that made sense. Let's go ahead and move on to another tree. All right, time for tree number 2. Really, the only difference here is the way we're going to be building the trunk, because the leaves and the top part are going to be basically the same. So for this tree, I want it to be very, very tall and a little bit twisty, not too much though. This is the best way that I found out how to do it. So I'm actually going to be using acacia log for this for no other reason than that it's more of a gray bark, and palm trees tend to have more of a grayish look to them. So I kind of liked it for this tree. So I'm just going to stack this up however many blocks I want. That seems fairly good. Then I'm going to offset it on a corner, make sure these two are connected like that, then have it go up again, a little bit of a distance. Then I'm going to go back on the block where my first part was and offset this a block again, and then keep going up and just make this as tall as you want. But the idea is to get a little bit of a curve in your trunk, and I think this is looking pretty good. I think it always looks better too when you try to get the sections as even as possible. Also, if you ever see a block facing the wrong way, try to get them all going straight up. It will look much cleaner. That looks pretty good. But this is going to be just a very tall, skinny palm tree. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did on that tree for this one, but I might think about it in a smaller scale. So I think I'm going to just create a much smaller spread on this palm tree. So again, I'm just going to start with like a little bit of a radius just to get an idea, and you're just gradually wireframing the shape of the tree. That's pretty much all you're doing here. It's just like building any other organic. You're just trying to figure out the shape first, then gradually adding on to it until it becomes a nice full tree. Something I forgot to mention in the first one, it does always look better too to build on diagonals more than building just straight out. Also, this corner is kind of wonky, don't do that. But I think it looks better to try to make things go on diagonals more, and it might be a little bit trickier to teach yourself how to do that and how to eyeball making curves on diagonals, but it really does make builds look more realistic and less like they're constrained to a grid, because that's really what they are, but it's supposed to help with the illusion that they're not. So I'm just going to keep adding on these diagonals here. Now I have a lot of the lower branches filled in, but not a lot of the top ones, so let's go ahead and add some of those. We're going to have some going almost straight out with like one little curve on the end, and then we'll also have some towards the top that are going almost straight up with one little curve on the end. We just want to make sure we're getting every angle of this imaginary sphere filled in. Just imagine that the palm tree is a ball of spikes and you need a spike sticking in every direction, and clean it up as you go too. If you see lots of extra corners, you can cut those out just to kind of clean up the build as you go. No need to have every single corner this thick, so just something else to think about. It's even okay to have them connected on the corners of the blocks like that, something I like to do. I don't like to have too many blocks touching because it's nice to have gaps in your tree. This one's actually looking pretty good, even though it is still missing a few. I think I'm gonna put one here. At this point, this is when I need to kind of fly around it and see what's missing. I see there's a large gap here, so I'm going to put an extra one right there, and maybe another one right over here. So that looks pretty good, and we're gonna do one more over here. I could do this all day, just saying I see another spot, but it's really up to you. It's your tree. You can build it however you want. But this is how I would recommend doing it, so that it would look something like that. So it's got a much smaller palm than the first one, but I think it fits this trunk style much better. Tree style number 3, we're going to be using the jungle wood and jungle leaves only for this one because it's fairly straightforward, just like the last one. So I like how in the last one we had a curve going straight up. This time I'm just going to add a curve that's more horizontal. So we're going to add one of those classic palm trees that you might see on the coast of a beach or something, and I'm just going to add a little bit of curve to this trunk. Now I'm going to make sure it's curving up, but I'm also going to make sure it's curving to the right or to the left. We don't want it to be in a straight line as we're curving it because, again, that just looks boring. We want it to look as interesting as possible. So we're going to really think about our curve as we're going up this way, but also every once in a while plopping a block over and making it go up. Really, you can just keep experimenting with this. Any curve will work. That one's looking okay, but I think I need to make the lower part a little bit longer. It's really up to you, whatever curve you want for your tree. And the top is going to be the exact same as all of the others. If you didn't watch the beginning of the video where I talked more about all of my thought process for these, well, you're gonna have to go back because there's no sense in me repeating the same thing twice in one video. So I'm just going to build out this tree using the same methods as before, where I'm mapping it out, figuring out the shape that I want, figuring out the size, making sure to build on diagonals, and making sure to angle everything in a proper way. So we have the lower ones angling farther down and the top ones angling almost straight up, and then filling in the ones in between on a nice in-between angle. Oh, it looks like I have another tip I can mention here. If you find yourself getting a lot of these right angles where you've got like 3 blocks going straight across, 3 blocks going straight down, it creates a very nasty right angle. So it's very easy just to add a single block there and smooth it off just like that in order to get the curve you need. Even though Minecraft is virtually full of right angles, we're trying to avoid them at all costs. And that's all there is to this here tree. I think I am going to clean up the trunk a little bit. That's always something you can go back and tweak. It's not like it has to be left there. Honestly, the leaves are the hardest part. So once you get that out of the way, you can always come back and tweak up the trunk. I mean, it looks pretty good as it is. I'm just trying to avoid any corners like this in the trunk because it just makes it look unstable. So make sure it's all connected nice and neatly. And there we go. That looks pretty good. And I can't believe I forgot to mention it, but of course, I'm sure you know you can add cocoa beans to the jungle wood to make it look like it has coconuts. Totally up to you. How about a miniature one, or a dwarf palm tree, I guess? We're just going to be using the same blocks plus a spruce trapdoor because I wanted to try texturing it just a little bit differently. So as the name implies, we're just going to do a very teeny tiny trunk, maybe no taller than this. Honestly, that's probably perfect. And at the very top of it, we're going to put our spruce trapdoors, and that's just to add that little bit of edge to help it stick out, similar to how we did with the stairs on the first one, but since this one is so tiny, I thought the spruce trapdoors looked so much better. And the trickier thing about this one is making sure to get the leaves in, but not to have them touch the ground. Technically, you could have them touch the ground, but I just made it a rule with myself, oh, I don't want those leaves touching the ground, because I still wanted it to look like it was high enough to be off the ground, if that makes sense. So just be very careful with these leaves. If you wanted them to bend up more than bend down, I suppose that's an option. There are lots of different ways you could make leaves on a palm tree, although in Minecraft it's kind of hard to convey all the different shapes. So I've just been sticking to the same basic shape because I think it works the best, but there are probably some other ways you could try it out. For example, not all palm trees have to be super full. I did mention that before, But some palm trees are pretty bare and pretty ugly. It just depends on what you're willing to do in your world and how pretty you want to look versus how bare and ugly. By the time you get to this shape, if you have been doing them all with me, you should be a pro at making these. It's really not that hard, you're just repeating the same thing, and they're all basically the same size. You don't want them to get super big, because this isn't an oak tree, the leaves are not going to be spreading very far, so it shouldn't take you that long to do it, even in survival, although I can't speak from experience because no, I haven't built a palm tree in survival yet, but I would assume it doesn't take too long to do. Also nice to get different heights so they're not all the same height at the top. And I'm just going to fly around this. Since this one is so small, it's kind of anything that's super long really sticks out, so I'm making sure that all the leaves are roughly the same length over here. This one's sticking out on this side. I think I'm going to need another one right here. It's really just being able to see where you're missing a leaf, or where you think you're missing a leaf. I think I could use another one right here. If you wanted this little one to be even fuller than the big ones, you can just go crazy with it and just add leaves everywhere. And I think that looks pretty good, aside from this really long leaf here, this long leaf here. But that looks like a pretty good little mini palm tree if you wanted to do something like that. Now, even if you made the trunk shorter, it would look really nice. Like, that was only 4 blocks for the trunk, but I think it would even look good if you did 3 blocks for the trunk. So there's our nice little mini palm tree. That's all for this simple how to build a palm tree video. I hope it was useful to you in some way. I hope my tips will help you evaluate your own creations and see things in a different light. That's the goal anyway. I don't know if it's actually working, but I hope it is for some people. Anyway, have a great day everyone, and I'll hope to see you again in another video. Bye!